Hey, it's me. This is my video response to the not so inconvenient truth. Um, I don't know how I felt about the article. It was good. It started off at an interesting point for me in the sense that it was going through and talking about how a bunch of researchers have been wanting to add sex in the mix and all of this stuff, and um, it goes on to talk about how they want to research it to research normal brain development in males and females and differences in acquiring diseases and whatnot. And one of the things I thought about is just putting this standard of normal on the development of anything. To me, I understand the need for it, and I understand the need for it in order to recognize the issue, and then over time be able to find ways to fix it. And but for me, I've come to realize that to put the name normal and abnormal on things, it just sets this standard for how things have to be, and it only further makes things strict in what box they need to fit in. And I feel like there's not always a perfect box for things to fall in. And it also allows a social stigma on a lot of things that aren't necessarily as bad as their stigmas make them, I suppose. And so that was just something that kind of put me off in the beginning, I guess, and it was just a thought I had. Another thing I was talking about was talking about the normal development, how there's sex differences and learning and memory and whatnot. And to me, to recognize that there's a sex difference, A, I don't know if I necessarily believe that there's a full-on sex difference, but B, to advertise that there's a sex difference just further reinforces oh, it's okay, you don't have to be able to do that, you're a boy, you're a girl. And it just further pushes men and women to these polar extremes. And I feel I understand to the point of we're reaching a point where we have the science to research the difference between two. But I mean, even in the article, it recognizes that the main subjects of these things are males because they're easier. So I don't know, it just kind of puts me off, I suppose, as I was saying before, just creating these, finding reasons to make men and women even more different, I suppose, instead of trying to find similarities and ways to I don't know, to me there has to be a basic human whatever. And I realize there's sex differences, but overall we're not that different. We are different in the sense that we have to be different because of what we can do reproductively. But I don't think we're so different that we need to keep pushing at how different we are. And also at the same time that we have I don't know, I feel there's so many things in between that just get disregarded. I mean, the obvious example would be transgender people, towards just how do you explain that, but then you're going to throw the word, as I was saying before, the word abnormal on it, and then that just, I don't know, reinforces stigma on things. I don't know, it's just, my brain was on a tangent today. Other than that, I started to get really curious on if anybody's done studies of differences in children's brains, and I realized that would have to be anatomical differences. But if they're finding anatomical differences in adult brains, then I feel they could easily do the same thing without an intrusive, unethical thing or study. That's the word I was looking for. Without an intrusive, unethical study to kind of see if those different anatomies are there before puberty or whatnot, and how at what point is it that we start seeing these changes in these anatomical regions. And then that made me think more that we learned a lot about in human growth and development how the brain is not fully developed until early mid-20s, I suppose, 23 or 24 or whatever. And how there's a resurgence of proliferating and proliferating and pruning within the brain, and how that's why high school students have such a hard time with like having the stereotype of being risky and whatnot because their brains just like their frontal cortex is not fully developed, and that's happening throughout the entire childhood. So what's to say that like social aspects, like yes, I believe that hormonal aspects do play a part in it because that would make like perfect sense. But we also have to realize that it could be completely believable that social influences in the way we treat male and female could have a huge part in these anatomical differences, just because like a girl could be raised to do certain things, and as she's growing up, like her brain will be keeping those neurons that are doing like what she's doing, not doing what she's doing, but the neurons that the little girl is using most. And so it would make sense that because we have these cultural stereotypes of male and female, that like there could be an influence of that upon how a child behaves and how strengthened certain regions of the brain are, or how big or small, and whatnot. So that's just where my mind went today, but that's all I have. So thank you.